Yeah. Yeah.
What is going on, everybody? It is free agency time. Let's do this. Welcome into the Dynasty Gambit. I am your host, Fantasy J77, over there on Twitter. With me tonight, my co-host, Kyle Senra, at Senra Says, over there on Twitter. And what would a gambit be without a last-minute change? So we had to go out to the Going for Two family and find our very own Mike Hicks at Drop the Mic, FF, over there on Twitter. Fellas, real quick, how are we doing tonight? Let's start with our guest, Mike. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. Walked in the door, got the message saying, "Hey, can anyone join in?" And I said, "Hey, with these two, why not? Let's do it."
Let's do it. Kyle, how you doing tonight, sir?
It felt like fate, and the timing worked out perfectly. I know apparently Mike and Gator interacted maybe within the last 24 hours, but yeah, it's been. I don't think Mike and I have because you weren't on the PLP we did. I don't think you and I have podcasted or done anything together this year. So
Nope.
Glad to speak with you again, Mike. It's awesome. Glad we can make this work.
Oh, hell yeah. All right, well, so like I said, we're going to dive into some free agency. But before we do some free agency, we had a hell of a weekend. The Combine happened, so let's start there. Let's start with the Combine this past week. My very own Florida Gator, Anthony Richardson, dominated and broke the Combine and Twitter in a matter of 24 hours. It was insane what he did as he jumps out of the stadium there in Indy. So real quick question, Mike. Who was one player outside of the Anthony Richardsons, the Bijan Robinson, outside of that stood out to you through the Combine, and why?
Good or bad?
Both.
I'm going to say it. Keishon Butte was my WR4, and I don't even know where he's going to be now. That was very disappointing on the good side.
I've got him at wide receiver 16, but I might be just super low on him.
No, I mean, I talked to another guy. I talked to Ryan Searfoss, and he was telling me that I was crazy for having him been close to my top 5 even before the Combine. And then he DM'd me and said, "Well, did I prove you wrong or wrong?" I mean, So Butte is booty. On the good side, I like Zay Flowers even more, but I think the one who upped his stock even more, even though he was looking good, Washington, the tight end from Georgia, pushed that sled like it was nothing, and everything else that he did. I think, I keep hearing that Kincaid is only a passing tight end, and maybe Darnell's going to move up a little more. Not saying he's going to jump Kincaid, but maybe he's going to move up a little bit more.
So real quick, let's just put it out there. It's, we don't know landing spot right now.
Yep.
But let's say you're in a tight end premium league. You're where are you drafting Washington? Because he looked like a man amongst boys when it came to the tight ends. When he was pushing the sled, where he was, on the out routes, all of that, he looked phenomenal.
I could see all 4 of the top tight ends going by early to mid second.
Okay, that's fair. Kyle, what did you see this weekend when the Combine that just stood out to you, either good, bad, or both?
Well, I think the top of my running back rankings, the absolute top is unquestioned Bijan 1, but as I guess, Jamie does a lot of, he's always in the chats, Jamie Paraga, the Cleveland connoisseur. He might show up tonight and maybe he can give me some more flack for this, but I know he pointed out on Twitter my Jahmyr Gibbs ranking right now, and you can check that out on goingfor2.com. Website has returned, and specifically, I'm part of the single QB rookie rankings for because we do have the 2 aggregate rankings. So we have a super flex section, got a 1 QB section. So you can find my rookie rankings in the 1 QB section. Yeah, I was the lowest on consensus than Gibbs. I think I've got him inside the top 12. At running back, I've got him at RB5. But even saying that, he's pretty consensus. Right, even just so I could say, I have him as a top 5 running back.
So you got your rankings pulled up right now? What do you have for your top 5? If you got Bijan at 1, Gibbs at 5, who's 2, 3, 4?
Well, watching the tape, the top 3 for me were Bijan Robinson, Kendre Miller, Devon Achane. adding production. I specifically look at scrimmage yards per season, but also, receptions and things like that. Single season receptions, especially. Like I know Zach Reed from the Dynasty Dummies has done the studies. Any running back that can get 20 or more receptions in just one season in college has a really great chance to do that going forward in the NFL. So it's kind of a threshold number. But looking at all that together, those were still my top three. I will say, however, if there's one thing that did change, and that will kind of lead into my biggest riser, Zach Charbonnet seems like he had really good combine results. His relative athletic score is at 9.42. So I might actually, I think I've got Charbonnet now, who, going into the combine, it was actually Devin Achane at number 2. A lot of talk expecting him to get that round 2 capital, and it seems like one of the better pass catching backs in the class. But it looks like Charbonnet, I mean, if he can put all that together and be close to an elite athlete, I think might raise him up to my RB2 right now. I know not all the running backs have relative athletic scores yet, so I was kind of waiting before finalizing my rankings on, just like post combine rankings. But Gibbs did okay. If anything, Gibbs and Achane might that could be two players I could switch, because it seems like Achane's relative athletic score is not very good, at least relative. I mean, it's above average, but relative to these elite guys, maybe not RB2 worthy. So that I think for me, there's flip up, because I before the combine I had Charbonnet at RB6, so that's probably 2 to 6 is probably where I'm going to see a lot of me changing things. Not so much a riser for me, but maybe a riser for everyone else. Evan Hull, who I had ahead of one spot ahead of Gibbs as the RB4. Maybe the best pass catching back in the class, and a 9.22 relative athletic score. He's probably what I should have, what I almost hoped Devon Achane would become. So right now, my prime candidates to be RB2 to me are Kendre Miller, who I love the tape on. I don't think you can love anyone more than Bijan, but if outside of Bijan, I think very impressive across the board, great footwork. I still. Here's Jamie. Yeah, he can rip me on the Gibbs talk.
There he is. There he is.
So I think to me, Gibbs probably maintained. I mean, his relative athletic score is 7.95, a little bit lower than these other guys. So I'd probably keep him at RB5. But right now, Devon Achane probably moves out of that top 5 to me. Probably RB6. I don't know that there's really anyone else I'd consider having him below, but I think he'd maybe fall in that second tier. And then maybe even just switch with Charbonnet. Charbonnet now to 2, could be Charbonnet, could be Miller, could be Evan Hull. I think those guys are kind of locked in for me as RBs 2, 3, and 4. And it seems like Jahmyr Gibbs locked in at RB5 right now. Again, draft capital is probably the most important thing. So where I'll probably see bigger swings than ever in my rankings will be after the draft.
Right.
If Gibbs if Gibbs goes in the first round of the NFL draft, it's tough to ignore that and not have him as the RB2. But until I see that happen, I'm a little skeptical of that happening. I just think maybe I'll be the hot take on Gibbs. Again, still top 5, but apparently RB5 in this class is just so ridiculously low. It's considered a hot take. So
yeah,
maybe I'm a Gibbs hater.
Yeah, it truly is. I mean, it's for me, it's Bijan 1, Gibbs 2. I have Charbonnet and have had Charbonnet 3 for a while. I think you got Bijan, and then there's a tier gap to Gibbs for me, right? And then there was a tier gap to Charbonnet. And I'm not trying to overreact to what was happening, in Indy, but that gap closed quite a bit for me is, between Gibbs and Charbonnet. Anything for you to add there, Mike?
Weren't you high on Tucker at one point?
I am still high on Tucker. Tucker is 4 for me.
Okay. Yeah, I had Charbonnet at 3. I'm kind of higher on Bigsby than I was at before.
Bigsby's 5 for me.
I've kind of grown on Bigsby. Hull, I'm not as high as you, Kyle, but I liked him coming into it. But the Achane one is the one that's a scary one to me, because I've seen some people saying he can go early second round because they say NFL loves him, or all the way to round 4 in the NFL draft. So it's like you said, Kyle, draft capital, I think for Achane is going to matter a lot. I mean, it's going to matter for everyone, but I think it might matter for Achane and Gibbs more than anybody.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Anything else on the combine that you want to add, Kyle?
No, I think that was the major implications. Again, I'm a little disappointed that so many running backs don't have RAS scores right now. It's tough to. So I think
you had 27 running backs out there, and then 12 of them, 11 of them did not even run a 40.
I don't like that.
Well, so I get it. And so this is why I asked, I don't want you to pick low hanging fruit, because like even JSN, I think JSN improved his draft stock because he didn't run the 40, right? Because everybody else ran the 40 and did such a shitty job, right? I mean, there was no wide receivers running anything, and JSN's over there going, I'll see y'all in a couple of weeks at my pro day, and that's when I'll run my 40. And then I will submit myself as the number one wide receiver in this class. So, well, as soon as it felt like as soon as the combine got over, we got a major signing. The New Orleans Saints signed Derek Carr, 4 years, $150 million. I don't know where in the hell in New Orleans they have this money tree. But all three of us need to get on a plane and go find it and split that tree, because this is insane. They have no cap room. How are they spending $150 million on a quarterback? But Kyle, what do you think about this for the offensive side of the ball? Olave, Kamara, if he even plays this year, whether he's suspended or not. And then the one I really want to know about is Juwan Johnson. Kyle, thoughts?
I guess the Juwan Johnson career arc and theme and athleticism isn't that dissimilar to Darren Waller, to be honest. But I think one of the things we see with Carr, and I do like this for Olave, and I think he's just outside my top 12 wide receivers, literally just outside. I think I have him at wide receiver 13. And the guys immediately ahead of him being DK Metcalf, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle. So I think he's in that tier. So could he, could look through those rankings and easily have him as the wide receiver 10. And I think the advantage of Carr isn't necessarily his efficiency, but he just locks in on his top target and will, depending on how the offense is designed. But once he finds that top target of the team, he will pepper them and make them a high market share player. So I do love that for Olave. And I'm not really counting on Michael Thomas kind of being a thing. And Olave to me is clearly the alpha on that team, and it's his time to take over and shine. I think at the very least he's going to get a quarterback that's going to give him that volume.
Yeah, I think with Michael Thomas though, with the cap hit that they have this year, and Kyle, that'd be something you were way better on than myself. But I think with the cap hit, it actually benefits them to say goodbye to Michael Thomas. I can see them doing some stuff with as far as the running back position to try to secure that up. Trying to find somebody to take over the who is the running back, Ingram, the Ingram role. But what do you think about the Derek Carr situation there in New Orleans, Mike?
You already know part of my opinion, Gator, and that is they should never have not given Jameis Winston a shot. He got a raw deal there, but for Carr, I do think that Juwan Johnson is going to have a decent role. I do think this helps out Olave a lot, but I do not think Michael Thomas is on the team on the first day of the season. I think he's going to be gone, which is going to help Olave be the number one target even more, because people were worried what's going to happen when Thomas comes back into the fold, and we all know that wasn't going to happen. I wouldn't be surprised if they draft another wide receiver or pick up someone, not one of the top guys in free agency. I mean, we all know this free agent class in the wide receivers is kind of ugly anyway, to put it lightly. But I could see them grabbing one of the lower mid guys in free agency to shore up the number 3 spot. You got a couple other youngsters. Why can't I think of his name right now? They're Shaheed,
yeah.
I think will still do good with Carr. But Kyle nailed it on the head. I mean, Carr does like to hyper target. He did it with Renfro. He's done it with Devontae and Waller. So I think Olave and Juwan are going to get targeted a lot. But it also depends, like you said, Gator. We don't even know what's going to happen with Kamara, and that's going to depend on what they do with the running game.
Yep. Yeah. So going on to the next one, and Jamie, fair, I don't know what Jamie's talking about here. Paris Campbell, Can we be done with that conversation already? And Paris Campbell to New Orleans? Are you serious, Jamie?
I actually want to bring up this comment again
Yes.
from Matthew Chester. First off, Matthew, thanks for joining. Talk about Mickey Loomis as a mad scientist. I haven't actually looked at the details of the Derek Carr contract until just now. It's actually pretty wild how they're making it work.
Mhm.
So while his average is like 37.5 million per year, his cap hit this year is 7.2 million.
Mhm.
His base salary this year is only 1.5 million. This is like kind of how the Browns did the
Yes.
Deshaun Watson contract.
Yep.
But because
God.
I think the way that they're kind of justifying this to Carr is that they gave him 28.5 million as a signing bonus. So he's basically getting his 30 million as part of that signing bonus with his base salary. So he's earning, 30 million each year on the next 3 years because his base salary goes up to 30 million starting next season. But it looks like the way it's structured, it really helps their cap this year. And that's kind of how they were able to get it signed because his cap hit is 7.2 million.
It helps it this year. It helps it this year, but it is the epitome of kicking the can down the road.
Oh yeah,
because when they
that's what they've
been
doing for decades,
right? But when they signed him, they immediately put in. There's already a dead year in it.
Yeah, the 27 years already voided, so it's really just a 4-year contract, but there's like a 5th voided year on it.
Yeah.
But
Jeez.
they could get out. I mean, they've got him for the next 2 years because his dead cap hit, obviously this year's dead cap hit is much higher than his cap hit.
Yeah,
but even in 2024, it's the case. So it's they can get out of him pretty easily after that, though. So really is just a 2-year contract for all intents and purposes. But one player they actually can't get out of is Michael Thomas. His cap hit doubles if they cut him. So I know there was the talk this year or recently of restructuring with Michael Thomas because I don't think the Saints have a choice but to restructure him. His cap hit's only 13.5 million. I say only because you look at other receivers basically doubling that. It kind of is. I mean, that's not what you want to pay someone who's played, I think, like 9 games over the last 3 years. Like that's pretty awful. And I think especially like most of those games, he hasn't really done well. Really hasn't done much since the 2019 season. So I think like 13 million still too much, but they can't just cut him though, because they they're already still 26 million, in the hole right now. So they're going to have to restructure and lower guys, but they actually can't. I'm looking at a lot of their big contracts and the dead caps basically equal to or higher than the cap hit in a lot of cases. With Kamara as well, they save $4 million if they cut Winston. So that seems like an obvious move to make, but it'd still be 20 million in the hole. So they're going to have to make some moves. It depends with how much they can restructure Michael Thomas, but as much as Mickey Loomis being a mad scientist, as Matthew mentioned, he's going to have to continue to do so and to play some cap gymnastics.
100%. All right, so moving on from the New Orleans Saints and the mad scientist known as Mickey Loomis, Daniel Jones also gets a 4-year deal, $160 million from the Giants, and because of that, Saquon Barkley gets the tag. First of all, let's start with the Daniel Jones, 4 years, $160 million. And I wish, honestly, we had the B League here because I'm sure he was throwing things as soon as this deal went down. Because I think this is just, again, not the proverbial kicking the can. You didn't sign this, you didn't pick up this guy's 5th-year option. So it forced you to make a decision. And then in that making that decision, now you're overpaying, at least in my opinion, $40 million a year for this guy. I understand the upside with his rushing, but he is like QB 16 or something along those lines, 16, 17 when it comes to passing stats. You take his passing and his rushing, and he's still only QB 8 at $40 million a year. So, Mike, Daniel Jones, 4 years, $160 million. Explain to me how this works.
Daniel Jones needs to crawl over to Brian Dable's front door and thank him and give him 15% of this contract. Because
he ain't crawling. He's getting a nice ride and really nice car with this contract.
I'm just saying he needs to grovel over there.
At least, right?
I'm just saying he needs to grovel over there as fast as gets there.
Yeah, buy the coach something nice, that's for sure. Here's
the thing.
New Year's present.
Like you said, Gator, they didn't take the 5th-year option. They wanted to see what they had. They brought in a coach who helped, the big deal with Dable was that he helped Josh Allen get to where he got. He goes, everyone was wondering what he was going to do with, with Danny Dimes, and he made Danny Dimes Danny $40 million. And I think it was inevitable as soon as the season got over that this was gonna be. I didn't know it was gonna be $40 million, but I said he was gonna be a Giant. People were like, "Oh, is he gonna be a Giant?" I figured he would sign the contract. I figured that he wasn't gonna get tagged. I didn't know if they would tag Saquon, like we'll talk about in a minute, but it was inevitable. Was it too much? Yes, but I think it's a necessary thing that they just had to do. It was just one of those things. They're not going to want to go for another quarterback and start all over after everything they did, doing what they did with, the rental pieces that they had. Kyle used to love it when I say it, so I'm going to say it. The dumpster fire of a position that they had at wide receiver, for them to do what they did this year was a miracle. And for them to take a step back at quarterback and have to restart over, it would have just been a dumpster fire of a season next year. So they just had to do it.
I don't know that that's fair. I don't know that that's fair. I don't know that it was truly a dumpster fire. I mean, they did make the playoffs.
No, I'm saying the wide receiver position was a dumpster fire.
Right, but you had two players in Richie James and what was the other one that came out of Buffalo? Hodges.
Isaiah Hodges.
So you had, those guys stepped up and okay, they're wide receiver threes probably at best.
No, that's what I mean. I'm not saying they did horrible. What I'm saying is for them to do what they did with what they had, you can't take a step back now. You have to just keep going forward.
Well, I don't think. To be honest, like I said, I mean, you have Daniel Jones is quote unquote QB8 overall in the season, QB9 maybe it was, but
yeah.
But then if you just look at his passing and he's QB16, there's upgrades to be had. I mean, they could have done better at quarterback for that amount of money, but that's my opinion. I'm not fantasy wise though. Fantasy wise, I do like the Daniel Jones being there in New York as a solid QB2 now. So, Kyle, let us know about Daniel Jones, what you think about his contract, and then go ahead and jump into Barkley getting tagged as well, and we'll come back to Mike here in a minute.
Well, it's funny because I think there were two elite quarterbacks that are potentially available via trade, and I think any team that wasn't set on their quarterback should have done whatever they could to go after either. It doesn't seem like either team. It seems like a lot of the teams aren't, so I don't even know what's going on there. So nobody
wants Jackson, so that's been said. Nobody wants Jackson, if that's who you're referring to.
But that's like outside of Lamar Jackson and Aaron Rodgers, I think Daniel Jones is easily the most attractive commodity on the quarterback market. To be honest, like the Giants paying an extra $3.5 million per season over Derek Carr to get a guy that's 6 years younger and he's already done more. He's won a playoff game. Derek Carr hasn't. Like, to me, I think the biggest mistake that any team was going to make this year was overpaying Derek Carr. Congrats, Saints, the team that just continuously makes mistakes. So that makes sense there. I actually think the Giants have approached it the best way. Like Mike talked about not wanting to regress. I mean, if you've got to the playoffs with him with bare bones at wide receiver, I think you were talking about upgrade, Jay. I think the upgrade available is at wide receiver. Like that's where they need to go and surround Daniel Jones and see, okay, was that for real or was it not? I guess I'll check the contract details too, but it also does seem like another one of those, like Derek Carr. It doesn't on the surface look like a 2-year commitment, but that's basically all it is. So kind of 2 years of prove it. And if we need to, then we'll move on. But I think if this team has playoff aspirations, I think you build around the quarterback that got you there. And to me, it makes sense to not go with the 5th-year option because if he sucked this year and you already picked up the 5th-year option, you're screwed because if you wanted to make a move for Lamar Jackson, you can't. Now it's given them the flexibility. They've been able to kind of use that time, and maybe that time has cost them a little more. But let's say they use that 5th-year option last year. He does well. He plays the season and does even better. Are they paying more? Are they paying closer to $50 million per year on the next contract? So if Daniel Jones does really well this season, they go and win another playoff game. It probably makes all that worth it because that would have cost you more then. So I don't mind the way the Giants approached it. And again, especially getting the value on the franchise tag at running backs because they kind of got screwed on their franchise tag values at just over $10 million. I think the Giants have played it the best way they possibly could. Honestly, I mean, this is like Daniel Jones they took him 6th overall. Like this was clearly a pedigree profile quarterback they believed in. So I don't know. Again, outside of trading for Lamar Jackson, I don't really know if there was an upgrade available. So I felt like if they weren't going to trade that pick, like they have to pay the contract anyway. They don't want to pay the picks and the contract. If you don't want to do that, then Daniel Jones really is your best option.
Yeah, the only thing that I will disagree with what you said is picking up the 5th-year option, because yes, playing this year as good as they played this year, that's what got him the $40 million a year. However, you pick up that 5th-year option, you're not paying that this year. You can actually stretch that. Yeah, okay, maybe it costs you more in the long run, but you also have more options, and you lock up Barkley or whatnot. But go ahead and let's talk about Barkley getting the tag. It's $10 million. I mean, which is absolutely asinine and ridiculous. And we'll talk about this probably more and more through the offseason. But running backs is probably one of the positions, at least that as fantasy managers we look at. It's either robust RB or zero RB for the most part. Those are probably the two biggest strategies, right? So when you look at the NFL, nobody in the NFL is wanting to take running backs in the first round and grab that 5th-year option. But then you look at it, let's say they do take a 5th, let's say they do draft a running back in the first round. Let's say Bijan for this year goes in the first round. You can literally tag him after 4 years. It's $10 million. It's going to go up a little bit in the next 4 years, but it's $10 million, right? Then you tag him again, and whatever it is $13 million. It's still cheaper than freaking paying him. So you can basically have this running back for 6 or 7 years and never really truly pay them with these tags. I think something's got to change there, but that's my opinion on it.
It
Kyle,
sounds like the true Dynasty Gambit is choosing to become a running back. I guess make sure if you're a running back, get that endorsement money, because that's where you're really making your money. The NFL money, that's pocket change, really. It's the endorsement money is what you really need to get, because I'm sure Barkley at this point is making way more in endorsements than he has from the Giants.
Yeah, you gotta call Gronk. Hey Gronk, how do you do this?
Give me that FanDuel hookup. I guess we're underdog here, so give me that underdog hookup.
Give me the underdog. Yeah,
actually, we've got that here. I guess I don't know if this is a good time to.
Yes, go ahead, spit it up. There it is.
The underdog. Well, first off, we got a nice QR code. We also have a promo code that you can scan the QR code, or if you sign up for Underdog, you can do so with the promo code GF2. And it'll give you a 100% deposit match on whatever you put in on your interest deposit up to $100. So, there's lots of, I guess there was a big MMA fight, and I don't know, I really bear John Bones Jones when it comes to knowledge here. Okay, that made me seem like I actually knew what I'm talking about. But yeah, I guess there's always big MMA fights, UFC and all that. Hockey playoffs, basketball playoffs. The Briar, I'm not sure if Underdog has Briar. I mean, it's not available in Ontario, and the Briar is happening in Ontario, so maybe I suspect there may not be much curling betting. But if there is, you can, get the promo. You can get the sign up, get the double deposit match with the promo code GF2, or again, scan the QR code on screen. We also have a caption for it here too, but I guess now we don't want to use it as much as we have a fancy QR code.
Well, so we had this discussion, and you can use the QR code if you're watching on an external device, not on your phone, of course. So if you're using just your device, your phone, then go to Underdog and use the promo code GF2. 100% match up to $100. And yes, Gladys, I love it. Thank you for coming in and asking the question. Are we talking about curling? Curling?
Yes, we're talking about curling.
It's the best. This is the best time to watch curling post Super Bowl. But the NHL and NBA playoffs haven't started. It's like, honestly, I love the curling season for that, because it's the perfect way to bridge that, like what would be like an enormous gap. I basically go the entire year with like always having sports on, because like the NFL season goes right to curling, goes right to the hockey playoffs. That basically ends as the CFL season starts, and that carries me to the NFL season. So
I will be 100% honest. I got hooked on curling during the Olympic. I think it was the 96 Olympics in Atlanta.
90. Oh, I don't think they had curling at the 96 Olympics.
Was it
98?
not? Okay, 98. Okay, 98.
Nagano.
Nagano. Okay. So I got hooked there, and no, I live in South Georgia, so we don't have ice or anything like that on a regular. But
Cool.
it is a very, very cool sport. I enjoy watching it on TV. It is definitely something that is worth watching. I would not bet on it because I have no idea who the players are or anything like that. But that is what it is. But I do enjoy
Honestly right now
watching it.
Like the early best bet for me, and I mean they went into the men's national championship like leading Canada in points accumulated through the season. But Team Manitoba, Matt Dunstone, it's a new team put together this year, and he's been a great curler, Matt Dunstone, but he's surrounded himself with a bunch of guys that have won before. I think it's so far like the results are showing. I think it might put him over the edge. I don't think they've lost yet this week. So
well, I will tell you how much I know about curling. If that is not the perfect name for a curler, because what they're doing is throwing stones.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, Jay gets it. Yeah, Matt Dunstone, perfect curling name.
Oh, yeah.
He's from Manitoba, which is kind of like, there's a few hotbeds of curling throughout Canada, and yeah, Manitoba is definitely one. The only other curling name I've heard as close is the rest in peace, Sandra Schmerler, former Olympic gold medalist.
Okay.
Schmerler the curler, like that's probably the only other name that's maybe better. But yeah, Matt Dunstone, definitely a curling name.
So
Kyle,
she was the Dicker the kicker before Dicker the kicker.
It's funny because she won the Olympics, the Nagano Olympics. I don't know if maybe you saw her there, but yeah,
maybe that's
I think she's a lot better than Cameron Dicker, though. I gotta say, because not on top of that Olympics, I believe she won 3 world championships. So yeah, one of the greatest curlers ever. So
well, hey, to tie in football and curling, there was a time, I don't know if you know this, Gator, Kyle probably will remember. There was a time where the great Kansas City Chief and Minnesota Viking, Jared Allen, tried to try out for the Olympics. And
I do remember this.
He put a team together and tried to win to go, and he failed. He got third place. He didn't make it.
But I do remember that. Jared Allen of the infamous Vikings. Back in the 90s, the late 90s, early 2000s, Jared Allen. All right, well, let's get back into some football here. And I know this is going to be one that again, we're talking about that 5th-year option. Somebody didn't pick one up, and it is Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs, they didn't pick up the 5th-year option. This one probably did save them a little bit of money. I'm not, in the long run, NFL rushing leader last year, but gets a tag. Again, he's going to be about $10 million, a little bit more than $10 million this year. Looks like, unless they go and get a Jimmy G or something like that, he is going to be pretty much the offense. So, Mike, let's start with you. Josh Jacobs getting the tag.
Being a Raider, this hurts me to say, but they actually did something smart because they needed to keep Josh Jacobs, and they weren't going to sign him to a deal. Just like you mentioned with the whole Barkley thing and just the running backs in general, it's easier to keep them for 5-6 years with the tag. Well, hey, you have the number 1 leading rusher, and you're only paying him $10 million. Mm-hmm. Mark Davis, GM, whatever your name is, I can't remember who it is now. You guys finally did something right for once.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there. I was truly hoping that Josh Jacobs would be, free agent market, go find a team kind of thing, because, what he did last year was just phenomenal. I've always been high on him, and I'm a Gator, and I hate Alabama. So, but I always liked that kid. So, Kyle, Josh Jacobs getting the tag. Thoughts?
Well, actually, more than thoughts, I'd like to ask you guys, again, get your thoughts, ask this question. Just between these two, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, I know from myself and my Dynasty rankings, I think they're both kind of back half top 12 running backs. Mm-hmm. I believe I've got Josh Jacobs at RB9. To me, if anything, it almost seems too high. Whereas I've got Barkley, I think it's 6. Without having Bijan in the rookies yet, it's 6. But I think obviously that'll be at least moving down 1 spot with Bijan Robinson.
Yeah,
I'd rather have Barkley than Jacobs. But what do you guys think?
I was going to ask you if you had rookies included in that. So so you're not including rookies right now.
So with rookies, maybe Jacobs is even out of the top 12. But
I would rather have Barkley. I think Jacobs was a little bit of a product of what was going on in Vegas, but just like Gator said, I don't. And he's talented. I was on him even though he was a Raider. He deserves all the credit. I would personally, talent wise, I would rather have Barkley.
Yeah, I think I would rather have Barkley as well. The only question I would have, we haven't seen an injury with Jacobs. We've seen it with Barkley, right? So, and then the age gap. I think there's like a year and a half, 2 year age gap. Is that right? Are
There's
they?
there's one draft class.
It's one draft
Jacobs,
class.
one draft class younger, but I think he was a young rookie coming out.
Right.
But I thought so was Saquon though. So I would guess 1 year in age, but I can look that up.
Yeah, I would lean Barkley. But at the same time, I mean, you can't. I don't think you can go wrong with either one of them. I mean, you're still talking about RB1s when it comes down to it. They're both going to be back in RB1s, anywhere from that 7 to 12 range, 8 to 12 range, depending on when you put these rookies back in there or whatnot. So, but I think I would lean Barkley as well.
There is, I guess, 1 year and 2 days difference. So,
oh wow! So yeah, there's a huge age gap there, and
those 2 days really make the difference there.
Well,
if only Jacobs was born on February 9th and it was only exactly a year difference, then yeah, or if Barkley was born a couple days later, I guess.
Well, yeah, that like I said, if it was 364 days, okay, that's fine. But now we're talking 366, 67 days. Yeah,
67.
There's a problem there.
And especially if it's a gap here. Oh, I guess they're both born in February, but so. Mike said something about Jacob's season last year was the product of what was going on around him, and I don't know if you can expand on that, Mike, but I was interpreting that as he just got so many opportunities because of the lack of. Okay,
yeah, that's what I meant.
And that to me, to tie in what you were saying, Gator, almost I think makes Jacobs the biggest injury risk or bigger injury risk of the two because of the dreaded 350 touches. He had 340 carries and 53 receptions. He had almost 400 touches last year. Mm-hmm. I think that's the one thing that concerns me with Jacobs is the heaviest workload he's ever had, and by a large distance. He had never even hit 300 carries, let alone close to 350. He had, what was the most touches he had? He had, I guess he hit 300 touches in his second season, but just barely. He had 306 total touches, 273 carries, 33 receptions. So how does Jacobs' body respond the year after that? To me, I wonder if this is probably one of the worst times to sell running backs. But let's say the Raiders do what they did last year and they take a 4th round running back, rookie running back this year, or even maybe let's say they go on day 2 and take a running back. I think we could see Jacobs' value hit because we're talking, like I said, RB9, you guys seem to think that seemed pretty good. Mm-hmm. And I mean, frankly, Jacobs has not been valued as a top 12 running back in previous seasons. And he is now because he's coming off the great season. But I do wonder if he falls out partially because the Raiders draft another one. So I wonder if this is a time to sell Jacobs right now. As bad as it is to sell running backs this time of year, it might be
no, I think
time to do it.
I think that's actually fair because if you look at what he, depending on your league, he was RB1 in standard, RB3 in PPR, or overall he was 13 in standard and 10 in PPR. Now's the time to do it because I mean he's going into his 5th year. We know how running backs break down, so now's the time to go. If you can get let me ask you like this. If you have Jacobs on your team and you can get this year 111, are you taking Jacobs are you going to keep Jacobs or are you going to get the 111? Mike?
It's funny because I think I traded Jacobs for basically, I think it was what turned out to be, I think the 109 or 110 last year in season. Mm-hmm. But I also don't have that pick because I think I immediately flipped it as a part of a package to get Tyreek Hill.
Right.
You see, I think any first at this point for a running back like that, like you mentioned, coming the 5th year with the chance that, let's say the 350 touches comes back to bite him and he has an injury, how much does his value plummet? I think the pick maybe not the ceiling of Josh Jacobs, but has a much safer floor. So I think it's a much safer investment. So yeah, I think if I had, I've got one Josh Jacobs share left. It's a co-managed team. So I'll talk to David Kingston, who's in as part of the Dynasty and Chill patron chat. That's how we met and interacted and decided to co-manage a team together. So it's my only co-managed team actually. So that was a interesting experience. So shout out to Scott Connor for the Dynasty and Chill patron chat for that. But like if I guess we have the 112. So if we got the 111 and back-to-back picks, I think I'd do that in a heartbeat. Under that context of that specific team where I know I've got Jacobs, but I think in almost any situation, I think I'd take the 111. Yeah,
I think I'd take the 111.
Can I get Zach Charbonnet there? My potential RB2, RB3. Right. I think I'll take.
I got Charbonnet in a super flex mock today at 111.
There we go. Yeah, I think I'm taking that reroll.
So then let's flip the script on. It's pretty much the exact same question. How high do you, if you've got, Saquon at 6, what does it cost to get Saquon? I mean, they're both in basically the same contract year, right? And with Saquon's already had the injury.
Yeah, maybe extra year. It's funny because he's got the extra year in the NFL, but he also one of those seasons was an ACL tear like week 1 or week 2, so he barely played. So like, okay, he doesn't have that much wear and tear, but he also not that much wear, but he has obviously the tear. So yeah, it's weird because it feels like 111 is too light for Barkley, and is that just?
It does.
I don't think at no point was Josh Jacobs as high valued as he ever was ever the RB1, whereas we've had that with Barkley, and that's more a name cachet than any reasonable value. So to your point, Jay, they really shouldn't be all that different. Now, again, Barkley didn't even hit 300 carries. Well, he did have a lot of receptions. I think he just hit the 350 total touches. But again, because of his role as a pass catcher, could also see him lasting longer than Jacobs in terms of a longer career.
Well, he also had a very, very, very good rookie year.
Oh yeah, phenomenal rookie. I think it's the most catches ever by a rookie running back, and I think if it's like, I guess we've had a few Christian McCaffrey seasons and I think a JD McKissick season that have gone up there with big receptions, but I think it's like still top 15 all time for receptions by a running back. Now, I think last year, I don't even think he hit 60. So while, we like this Daniel Jones offense, he also isn't hitting the Eli Manning dump off to him 90 times offense either. So, yeah, you see, I think I'd take Barkley still. That's a long way of saying that, but it doesn't feel like there should be as much of a gap.
They shouldn't be that far off, right? Yeah. But there is.
There's 3 spots in my rankings, but it feels like there's a tier break.
What would it take for you, Gator, to get rid of Barkley?
I would be asking probably somewhere in the 104, 105. Okay. To be honest, I mean that's
get that chance at a quarterback,
right? Yeah. You're looking at name cachet and what he did. What he did his rookie year, he came back from the injury, and what he did last year. Look, I'm not going to just give him away for free, right? I'm not going to give him for, let's call it the 111. And then, I think Zach Charbonnet is going to be a great player, but I'm not giving Saquon for Zach Charbonnet.
We think Zach Charbonnet can replace what Jacobs has done. Last year notwithstanding, but again, if a guy gets 340 carries, then maybe that's not so surprising. He leads the league in rushing yards. We think that production's replaceable. Tough to see Zach Charbonnet getting 89 receptions as a rookie, for instance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's kind of where I am with that. I just wanted to see what your thoughts are. So let's, we talked about some injury. We talked about, tags, and so let's give some joyous news right here. Geno Smith, after 10 years in the league, finally gets a bag. He finally gets a bag. 3 years, $100+ million. $100+ million. Let's go.
If I remember right, I think his first year is like completely front loaded.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, it's got to be a front loaded. But props to him for going out, in a 1 year deal basically last year.
Yeah.
Basically getting put up. Hey, it's going to be you and Drew Lock. go win the job. Not only did he win the job, he excelled at the job. Everybody faded DK Metcalf, including myself. Faded Tyler Lockett. This passing game is going to be horrible, whether it's Drew Lock or whether it's Geno Smith. It's not going to be good.
People were fading Tyler Lockett when Russell Wilson was there. To be fair, everyone's always been way too low on Tyler Lockett than we should be.
But he went out there and showed out, gets paid for doing it, and now is in prime position to bring in the next Seattle quarterback. So what are you guys' thoughts on Geno Smith finally getting paid? Well-earned payday. Let's go to you, Mike.
Good job, Geno. You proved me wrong. I hate saying it. I thought Locke was going to win the job, and I thought Locke was going to do decent in Seattle. And I was completely wrong. I jumped off I ran a freaking 100-meter dash off of a 40-meter pier. I mean, but good for Geno. He deserves it. He's one of the good guys. He's gone through some rough stuff, New York, having to deal with the New York Jets, then having to go and being the quarterback the year that freaking Ben McAdoo ruined Eli Manning's end of his career. He's gone through a lot. I listened to a podcast with him. You can tell he's a good guy. He just wants to do what he needs to do for his team to win. Go get the bank when you can in the NFL because, we all know it's a business and they'll get rid of you as soon as they can if they have to. And for him, he proved that he can do it. And now for Seattle, they can go draft somebody and have him sit for a couple years if they have to. I mean, I have an idea of who I would if I did do that, but I don't think that could happen. But other than that, you just have a guy for a couple years and then who knows, in 2025 or whatever, you draft a QB.
So you're saying Anthony Richardson to Seattle at pick 5 is what you just said.
That is
out
not
loud.
what I'm saying.
That is what you said out loud.
Nope,
You're not going
I have a different quarterback.
Who's your quarterback you think Seattle's gonna pick at 5?
No, I'm not saying at 5.
But then they won't get a quarterback unless it's a second-round quarterback.
Are they going after Hendon Hooker?
4.
They're going after Hendon Hooker.
Okay.
The torn ACL, right? Like you don't have to rush him at all.
You don't have to rush him.
He may not even be healthy.
But could you imagine? Yeah. Could you imagine Anthony
if they did it with Richardson? Oh my God!
DK Metcalf.
Hey, it'd be perfect. I mean, I could see it happening.
I mean, that's we're keeping it in the SEC family.
Walker backfield, the RB1 in Dynasty right now. At least RB, yeah. Like literally no one else is, but my rankings have him at that.
Got you. Kyle, what do you think about the Geno Smith stuff?
Love
3
it for
years,
Geno.
$100 million.
So I'm just looking up because I saw this on Twitter and I wanted to confirm. I love over the cap for the being able to go through in history and like player history. Geno Smith, do you want to guess how much he's made in his NFL career up to this point? Again, not his endorsements, which I guess may hopefully be higher, but
you're talking about just contract. How much has Geno Smith made in the NFL? All right, so
so far,
up to this point.
Where was he drafted? He was a third round.
He was a second round pick, I believe.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna say, and we're talking about total over the 10 years.
The entire
total 10
since
years.
he was drafted in 2013.
91 million.
85.
You guys aren't even close. He's made 17.48 million, not even 17.5 million.
Oh Lord!
Now his it's funny. I love his phrase. I've seen so many people use it as part of their logos, and it was such a great motto. Everyone wrote me off. I didn't write back. The check that was written to him and given to him, I think he loved what this was written at 28 million on the day of the signing bonus, and then I think the total guarantees are 40 million. So like just the signing bonus alone is more than double what he's made. So good story for him. Would love if the running backs got paid like this, all the punishment they go through. But at least good for Geno to get the bag because nothing's guaranteed except the 40 million he just got.
That's a stat I was not expecting to get tonight, and damn sure wasn't expecting it to be that low.
Yeah, I was shocked when I saw that.
That's insane.
That can't be. But he went through the rookie contract and then he was signing like not league minimum, but like
veteran minimum deals, 1-year deals here and there, right?
$7 million last year with the Seahawks is like that almost accounts for half of it, right? So
that's going to be his biggest contract,
paycheck.
right?
Yeah, no, it is. Like I think he hasn't even through his rookie contracts, $2.5 million through that, and then basically not even sniffing 2 million any year after that. So even just last year with like just that audition when Russell Wilson got hurt in 2021, that was enough to springboard him to the contract he got in 2022 and the springboard of that to this massive payday. I mean, I love it for Ken Walker as an RB1 in Dynasty because if, like, you know, Geno Smith was passing him the football, that was maybe the biggest concern with Walker coming out was, oh, will he catch the ball? But Geno, he'll dump down to the running backs and he'll target Metcalf and Lockett a ton. But after that, like, it seemed like he wasn't afraid to give Kenneth Walker those types of opportunities. So I love it from Ken Walker's perspective because it's not a good enough quarterback to where he can still be the focal point of the offense. And like the pass game can just augment that too. So I love this for Ken Walker, honestly.
No,
So that I went and I gave up Breece Hall in the 209 in the Speak On It league that Gator and I are in to get Ken Walker. I want my RB1. I didn't have a dynasty share. It was my last Breece Hall share. So that maybe that's something he's got a torn ACL. I'm sure I'll have more opportunities to buy him at future times. But yeah, I wanted to get Ken Walker now that, solidified the quarterback. I was willing to give up that price. So, and I mean, part of that league, Gator, is no taxi squad. So it's like, hey, got to be efficient with. I want to be kind of making these 2-for-1 moves to not have to drop anyone and clear up the roster spot. So I like the structure of that type of deal.
Yes.
I'm chasing Ken Walker as the Dynasty RB1. Again, I don't think anyone else has him ranked there. If you look at the going for 2 consensus, he's always in the top 5. 4 or 5, wherever he's ranked there. So, but no one's quite has the audacity to put him at RB1 like I do.
Yeah, the one thing that I do like about what D did with that league, and y'all go follow D and over there on Twitter at Los D Mix, part of the Going for 2 family on Tuesday night. Him and our boy Denny Ocean get together and they throw out some great pods on Tuesday. But one of the things that I like that D did was, of course, there's no taxi. But the other thing is so we have and I don't even know what the number is, but let's call it a 23-man roster, right? Your starters and your bench. But then when it comes draft season, it's only a 3-round draft. But you don't.
So Gator was smart by selling me all his late picks last year. Good. Yeah. So 4D chess, Gator. Wait.
You have to
take the gambit.
If you take a draft pick, you have to cut somebody on your team, right? So you really have to play the mind game. If I'm drafting knowing I'm going to draft late because my team is pretty good, I made the playoffs. So I ended up in a draw for pick.
Yeah, and I ended up do that. It's a lottery for all the playoff teams. It's not just ranked on playoffs. So
right,
you could be the team that wins a championship, but end up with the 105 because you win the lottery.
So it's a 10-man league. I ended up with the 109, which I still own my first round pick, but I gave up my second and my third round pick because I didn't want to cut those 2. I didn't want to cut those players. And I don't remember exactly who. I for Dak Prescott.
See, I can't remember who I got for the third, but I definitely don't remember who I gave you for the second.
Dak Prescott, if I'm not mistaken, right?
No. Although I think that was the third.
Okay, maybe it was the third that I got Dak for.
Yeah, because I had ended up. Trevor Lawrence went undrafted because it's a 1 QB league, and I picked up Lawrence. I picked up Geno Smith. I drafted Dak and Tua, but my QB room is solidified by the waiver pickup, so I was able to trade Dak. You gave up Chase Edmonds for that second,
that's right.
Which is the second I just used to flip to get Ken Walker. So basically, it's Breece Hall and Chase Edmonds for Ken Walker, if you want to think of it that way.
Yeah. So
either way, give me Ken Walker. Love it.
Yeah. No, absolutely, 100%. But I do like the way D has set that up to where it's very, very, very competitive, and it's a very active league. And it's been fun. It's only going into year 2, but I think it's going to continue for a good minute. Bunch of good group of guys in there. All right, so Evan Ingram gets the tag in Jacksonville. Props to Evan Ingram for finally showing up since his rookie year. But probably more importantly in Jacksonville.
Yes.
Welcome back to the NFL, Mr. Calvin Ridley. How have you been doing on the tables is what I want to know.
Thank you very much. I'm so happy. Woohoo!
Kyle, Evan Ingram getting the tag. Calvin Ridley reinstated. What does this mean for Trevor Lawrence? Doug Peterson. They're in Jacksonville.
I mean, it seemed like Trevor Lawrence was already on the upward trajectory anyway, but yeah, having an extra weapon and being able to tag Ingram and then, get Ridley, they haven't lost anything. I believe Marvin Jones might be a free agent, and he still had 81 targets last year, but it does feel like, Ridley could easily replace that. And then, Zay Jones had 121 targets. So if anything, I think Ridley can also replace that and make a really true 1-2 punch with him and Christian Kirk. And those two are going to combine for probably close to 250 targets like Kirk and Zay Jones did last year. To me, I think Evan Ingram has a good chance to reproduce his role from last season. It's funny because I looked up his stats because we did talk about this on the Full Press Fantasy Pod earlier this week. And last year he had a career high in receiving yards and catches. Yet he only had 98 targets, and he's had 2 different seasons with 100 targets before then. One is his rookie season, as Jay alluded to, which, career high in targets as a rookie, also career high in receiving touchdowns. But so, a bit more boom bust with those touchdowns, but yeah, more receptions and more receiving yards this past season. So much more efficient quarterback play with Trevor Lawrence, I think, helps that quite a lot. So I could see Evan Ingram reproducing his role. I think from last year, if there's anyone who's likely to lose targets, I would say it's Zay Jones. He seems the likeliest to me he'll maybe even fall behind Evan Ingram in that pecking order. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Ingram is the guy that didn't get 100 targets. They focus on the 3 receivers, and Ingram's the one that gets hurt. But I don't know. I could see Zay Jones really being that guy that falls off of his production from last season, and Ingram at least being able to maintain it, which I like. I've got him at Dynasty tight end 7. To me, it's a clear tier break after 6, and 7 through 14, even further than that, 7 through 22 probably. You could jumble and put whoever you want there, but outside of Evan Ingram, I don't really know who else I'd put. I like him being tied to that quarterback, even if it's just for one season. But I think it's a great offense to be in, and he certainly seemed to come strong as the season went on. And I do want to shout out, yesterday was International Women's Day, and was wearing the Scott Fishbowl women's rock shirt from a couple years ago for a couple of reasons. A, because I actually had Evan Ingram on my Scott Fishbowl team last year, so shout out to that. And I believe I was the furthest to make it from going for 2. I finished 98th out of 3,000 plus. So I've never made the Scott Fishbowl playoffs before. And not only did I make it, but got to the second last week, the semifinal week, and made the top 100. So not that Evan Ingram was the biggest factor. I did have a guy named Patrick Mahomes that probably helped more than anything. I had the QB1 and the RB1 because I had Mahomes and Eckler. So those are probably the 2 biggest reasons. But certainly I went so heavy on quarterbacks and running backs early that the late shots at tight end, like Evan Ingram, was also something that helped sustain. My wide receivers sucked, but at least my tight ends were good. But yeah, so just wanted to shout out Evan Ingram, even though, yeah, that's why I chose this shirt. This Scott Fishbowl shirt in particular was the women's rock shirt. Again, International Women's Day yesterday. We should always appreciate women. That's why I mentioned Sandra Schmerler, because on top of being a great curler, she's also been a huge advocate for donating to hospitals, and the Sandra Schmerler Foundation makes sure to, especially pediatric centers at hospitals, and saving babies' lives is always the something that was dear to her heart and important for her and her family. And yeah, talking about saving babies' lives, and then the message comes up, Kyle killed it in Scott Fishbowl. Perfect timing.
Right. Perfect
Gator.
timing.
That's why you're hosting. I'm the guy that just rambles. But
Well,
yeah,
you
I'll stop rambling.
You speak of women in this space of fantasy sports and in our industry, and we have our very own Gladys, who you can see on every other Thursdays. She is gracious enough to give us a week off, including Kyle, because Kyle does the Monday show and then the Thursday show, and then Gladys comes in the following week and does the Monday show and Thursday show. And if you haven't checked her out on those Thursday shows, I haven't had a chance to do the Monday show because I work a little bit later on Monday, but the Thursday shows are absolutely phenomenal. Kyle, what's the name of her show on Thursday? It is.
Oh, you see, you didn't have this all order. You didn't.
No,
no,
because I just looked up and I'm like, there's Gladys is in the chat. It is.
I mean, does the name really matter? You can have everything in a random order.
In no specific order. That's right.
In no particular order.
No particular order.
Close.
No particular order. I was there.
You had the in. Once you get that in and you get that foot in the door.
Once you're in, you're in.
Yeah,
right.
Check out the Going for Two Live Network. And I mean, if you're watching this, you might know this, but subscribe. check us out and like the videos and like all the videos on the network. But yeah, they do a phenomenal job. Gladys is actually gracious enough. You said give us a week off, but she actually invited me on, so that like not this next Thursday, but I'll be doing back-to-back Thursdays on the 23rd again in a couple weeks from now with the Dynasty Gambit, and then the 30th, I believe, is when I'll be on with Gladys again. So appreciate that. Yeah, Gladys is
awesome.
So great.
Absolutely.
Love having her co-host in season as well when we do the Monday night shows together, as well as Dan, who wasn't here to rant about the Giants, but I thought we rambled and ranted enough for him.
Well, he'd still be rambling now, like 20 minutes later. So
yes,
Dan.
yes.
They gave Daniel Jones 169 million. What are they thinking? Trade for Lamar Jackson. Take the Dynasty Gambit and trade for Lamar Jackson.
I do want to get to Mike's take on Evan Ingram getting tagged and Calvin Ridley. Welcome back, baby. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back.
It's funny because I guess I was rambling. I didn't get to actually ask you guys about AJ. But that's who I think is like the guy that'll lose the most.
No,
I did ask what you think, but then didn't give you a chance to answer.
No, I agree 100% because I think what we didn't see this past year was what we're going to see this year is going to be a lot of more passing usage for ETN. And so I think Zay is going to actually follow quite a bit. Now you've got Calvin Ridley, you've got, of course, Evan Ingram, you've got, the uptick that I think is going to happen. It's just my opinion, but I think there's going to be an uptick in passing for ETN. So I think there's going to be. I don't even think he hit 60 targets last year. So yeah, he definitely has room to move. And I think they did that on purpose with him. Coming off the foot issue, I think they wanted to ease him back in. I don't think they thought they were going to be as good as they were, right? And then they did, and they were like, "Oh shit!" I mean, even though
I'm sure they believed it, but yeah, you're right.
I thought they would be.
Yeah, you did.
I still picked the Titans to win the division, which apparently was not the hot. That was the popular pick. Was apparently the Colts for some reason. But yeah,
well, Matty Ice.
Yeah, not so, Matty Mel, more like.
Well, let's get over here. Let's get over here to. I want to get to Mike's take. I know Mike's over here stewing.
Keep interrupting. Sorry, Mike. We love talking with you.
You're good.
No, because Kyle, I've been doing
this
on purpose because Mike is fixing to explain. He's over there fixing to explode.
Okay, so we should just create more suspense and keep talking and not let Mike.
He's going to.
So I'm actually playing my role perfectly, and you didn't even need to instruct me because you knew. Just let him go, and it'll be fine. And we don't even need to say anything.
I already knew what Gator was doing.
I don't, so that's why he's hosting. That's good.
Go ahead, Mike. Let us know what's going on over there.
Right, so I gotta set it up for Kyle because Kyle has no idea why. My bold take of the year was Jacksonville was gonna win the AFC South, and everyone thought I was absolutely crazy. So when it absolutely actually happened, I went berserk. I am high on ETN just like Gator. I do agree with you, Gator, about the take about ETN 100%. My thing with Peterson is Doug Peterson, when he was in Philly, loved and learned from the great Andy Reid, loves to use the tight end. Then you get Ingram in. Ingram has a great year. Just like Kyle said, most catches, even though he had more targets in New York. He liked to drop the ball in New York. He doesn't drop the ball in Jacksonville. But I do think he's going to have around the same production, if not a little bit more. I think it might drop targets a little bit, but I don't think it's going to drop the production so low that he's going to lose his value. I like where you have him, Kyle. I don't know if I'd have him right there at 7, but I can see what you're saying. 7 to 15 is so in flex that you can have him all mixed. Zay Jones will lose a little bit, but just like Gator, I am so happy that Calvin Ridley is back, baby. Let's go. Stay away from gambling.
Real quick, Mike, real quick. So did you see, and I want to say it was at the Combine, a reporter asked Doug Peterson about the Super Bowl.
No.
Did you see what he said?
No, I did not.
Andy Reid owes me money. At least partial ring because he stole that play from me.
Oh, the
Agnew play.
You see, it should be the opposite. If anything, it's Andy Reid. Well, you showed us the way, but it's also like, man, you gave the Eagles the map to know what they were supposed to fix. And like the Chiefs got lucky that the Eagles didn't fix that, and they kept going with that defensive formation in the red zone.
Yeah.
But like Doug Peterson really showed them the way to, like this I almost thought it was the opposite. Like this was Peterson trying to give one final gift back to the Eagles. Okay, guys, this could be a problem.
Here it is.
If Jamal Agnew could score, imagine what the Chiefs and their super talented players can do. Not that they necessarily knew that. Well, I mean, at that early in the season, we knew how good the Eagles were. And I think we knew the Chiefs were
Easy
good.
was super talented. Easy was super talented when it comes to the Chiefs wide receiving core.
Hey!
I mean, I think Kadarius Toney's a much more talented player than Jamal Agnew. I don't know. For some reason, I thought that was a safe bet. I guess not.
It's possible.
It's possible. True.
Kadarius Toney is better than McCall Hardman.
Well, yeah.
Is he
No,
though? I
Gabe,
mean,
you know how I feel
mean-
about Hardman. He's gone. He's gone.
he gone.
He's
They're
gone.
very similar, but yeah, I'd agree with Mike that Tony's the better player. It's the better version of the speedy guy that gets hurt a lot.
Well, do you guys want to get into some rapid fire free agents, or do you want to save that for a 2-week episode?
Well, here's the thing. I think that actually was a great preview. Again, why he's the host. The truth is, I put the Lamar Jackson icon on, and I know we've referenced him a few times. But
We gotta. I was trying not to have Lamar Jackson talk, but let's talk about.
I figured
Lamar
we should
Jackson.
end the
Let's
episode with
do
it.
it.
I thought the way you had organized and led up, I thought we were leading up to just let's finish the episode with Lamar Jackson.
I didn't really want to talk about it because everybody's talking about it, but I guess we have to. I mean, not that I shouldn't say I don't want to. Everybody's talking about him. I think it's getting to a point where we're going to oversaturate it, but we are a fantasy pod, so we do need to at least address it. So Lamar Jackson, not exclusive tag, meaning that any team can talk to him because they're not going to talk to his agent because he is his own agent. If he does sign the offer sheet from them, Baltimore has the option to, of course, match that. And if they don't, that the team that he signs with gives up their next 2 first-round picks. Now, I don't know if, for instance, let's call it Atlanta this year. Let's say they have 2 first-round picks in 23, 2 and 24. Is it 1 from 23, 1 from 24? Is it the next 2, period, the end? That I don't know. Don't know if either one of you know that. So that would be my first question.
I don't know either.
Okay, so they're going to give up their next first 2 picks, first round picks, for Lamar Jackson if the Ravens do not match. I honestly think this is yes, Lamar, I think you're worth money, but I'm not going to guarantee you a Deshaun Watson contract. And if you think for 1 second that anybody out there is going to give you $280 million all guaranteed, go find them.
I guess the one message is, like Lamar could always say, but the Browns did it, and then every other team can look. The Browns did it, being a reason to do something. When has that ever been a good thing, right? Like when has the Browns ever been the model way to run a franchise? And this is exactly what NFL success is. So because the Browns did something probably means it's probably not a good thing to do in a sense.
Yeah, I don't disagree. You don't follow, at least for the last, and I know this is going to hurt Jamie's feelings right here. You don't follow the Browns, structure, or narrative for what they've done over the last, 40 years?
Basically, since they won an NFL championship without Otto Graham. Basically, since Jim Brown was there.
Right, and they've had some decent players.
It's funny because the Packers have had, I think, since the Browns' last championship, the Packers have won 5 NFL championships. Just as a reference point.
Are we talking to curling again, or are we just talking football?
I don't believe there was a Packers team in curling, to be honest.
I'm surprised you don't have
Northern
one of your
Ontario,
teams.
it does have green and gold. Maybe that's part of my affinity for the Packers color scheme.
Yeah, I'm surprised you haven't named one of your teams, Packers.
I want them to trade for Lamar Jackson. Yeah, trade Aaron Rodgers to what seems like the Jets or the Raiders or whoever, and then the Packers already have a first-round pick, but using whatever you get from there, but also throw in Jordan Love. That's how you get Lamar Jackson. So I want Lamar Jackson on the Packers.
Yeah, so that was going to be my next question. Well, first of all, let's go to you, Mike. What do you think of this whole Lamar drama?
No, I think you nailed it on. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's the fact that Baltimore is telling Lamar, if you think you can get it, go make. If you think that's what you can get, go make your deal. I think they just want to prove that what they're saying they'll give him is what he would really get. I don't think the owners are sitting there calling people up or anything like that. No shenanigans. But the rest of the league is he's going to end up being the scapegoat or in the sense of that first quarterback that's going to go out there and try to get that guaranteed money. And the rest of the league is going to be like, we're not going to give you that. Just like Kyle said, we're not going to make the same mistake that these idiots in Cleveland made.
And the one thing I'm just thinking of too, sorry, Gator, real quick.
Go ahead.
I say real quick. You've heard Sage say real quick and then go off a 5-minute rant. So I guess
I've heard that too.
But maybe it's not even Lamar's contract. Maybe teams have been phoning the Ravens trade talks, and what the Ravens want in exchange is just so ridiculous that okay, we're not going to bother trading. We think we can hold out a year, and you're going to have no choice but to let him walk as a free agent. I think maybe that's what teams are thinking. This is actually maybe more geared towards the Ravens, and you have to drop your price down more than it is Lamar Jackson. Maybe it is about Jackson's contract demands, but I just kind of got that flash of there are two components here because the team does have to trade for that. And again, I guess if the compensation, I guess it's weird because would it be cheaper just to trade for him and then rescind the tag and then just sign him to that contract? Because otherwise, if you match, like if you send them an offer and they match it, it's 2 firsts. So maybe that's the Ravens is they've locked in that price now. Okay, no, that's the legal requirements to sign, and that's kind of what they've been looking for is the multiple firsts, and teams don't want to trade that. I don't know. Well, now maybe they don't have a choice but to trade the 2 firsts if they want to talk to him. So that's already like we were willing to give you a first and then do the $250 million guarantee, but we won't give up 2 firsts and do that. So
so here's what I want you to look up, Kyle, real quick. What is the draft order? Because the question I have is who is best suited to go and get Lamar? The obvious answer, at least in my opinion, right away, is Atlanta. So if Atlanta gives up, and I want to say Atlanta is what, in the top 15?
They're 8th.
They're 8th. Ooh. So would you, as a Baltimore fan, would you rather have the number 8 overall pick and call it a 24 first, because I don't know how that works out, whether it's the very next first or if it's the following year. So call it the 8th overall pick. So now you have 2 first. The 8th, and Baltimore has the 16th, 17th, somewhere in that range. So you have 2 top
22.
20.
They made 22? The playoffs. They're 22.
Okay. So could you turn around and trade those 2 in order to get a Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, move up into that top 4, basically, is what I'm getting at, and secure because you could have Tyler Huntley, right? I think he's a free agent as well, but you could re-sign him. But you could have a Tyler Huntley for this year, right? Go ahead and pick up a decent, maybe depending on who drops, a Jalen Hyatt in the second round. You got Bateman, you got Hyatt, you got a starting quarterback in the for the future, because Baltimore has never been that team to go out there and overpay for any skill position.
And Joe Flacco, though, you give him a big contract after winning a Super Bowl.
But he won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It's not like you win.
Context is important.
Would you rather win a Super Bowl, or would you rather win an MVP as a team? Would you rather a player on your team win a Super Bowl, or your team win a Super Bowl, or a player on your team win the MVP?
That's
right?
Not even close. No
as
contest.
a team, you want the ring, right? So I see what Baltimore is doing here. Mike, what are your thoughts on Baltimore and Lamar Jackson?
Actually, can I interrupt real quick and say, from a fantasy perspective, I will say, however, Joe Flacco's never won me a fantasy championship, but Lamar Jackson certainly did in his MVP season.
Well, unfortunately, I had to pick up.
We are not the
Joe
Baltimore
Flacco.
Ravens.
I had to pick up Joe Flacco last year because, I had a little issue.
He was on my Scott Fish. Yeah, I picked up Joe Flacco and Scott Fishbowl too. Yeah.
Well, I had an issue with one of my starting quarterbacks in Scott Fishbowl, and Zach Wilson decided not to
show up.
You know, no, he showed up. He just
Get outplayed by Chris Streveler at points in the season. Yeah, that's not good.
well, he went to the lady's house that he shouldn't have been at, and then so he's you know how kids are these days in New York. Anyway, Mike, what are your thoughts on Baltimore and Lamar?
No, so I already said why I think they are what they're doing with the money and all that. But when it comes to the actual trade thing, I mean Atlanta's a team. I mean Carolina's sitting at 9. I mean that is intriguing. I still think teams saying they're not interested are lying out of their goddamn teeth. Yes, I'm talking to you, Washington.
Nobody's interested in a.
To be
in
fair,
a MVP
I could
player.
see Washington being legit. Sorry, Jay, because they're like, and I know George Carmi, Full Press Commanders, which there's one franchise tag player we're not going to talk about. It's Deron Payne. But if you want to hear George Carmi thoughts on it on the most recent episode of the Full Press Fantasy Pod, but he also references the ownership sale and the situation with Dan Snyder.
Yeah.
Like Dan Snyder, if he's about to sell the team, does not want to just put $250 million away that he's going to have to pay out eventually for not owning a team. So I actually think Washington's out for that reason. They're not going to make a big commitment like that until ownership is settled. So maybe if this lasts long enough, but I think for now that their refusal to me seems legit because I don't think they have the finances to be able to do it. Or, I mean, he does. Like Snyder probably has the money, but he's not willing to because I can't blame him. Like, if you're literally about to sell the team, why are you putting the $250 million investment right away in him like that?
Yeah, I mean, another one that gets me is, I mean, let's talk about, I mean, not your team, but in the sense of, saw something on Twitter the other day that said, if the Jets don't get Aaron Rodgers, because the Jets aren't that far off. I mean, Jets are a decent team. Could the Jets pull something because they already have pieces on defense? They already have the wide receivers. They got Brees Hall. Could the Jets try it? I mean, I don't know if they will, but that's a team that supposedly people think have the assets and the money to do it.
It's funny because the three teams you've brought up specifically, Mike, Carolina, Atlanta, New York Jets, they all make so much sense and they absolutely should trade for Lamar Jackson. But there's something that all three of those teams have in common. I don't know if you know what it is, but it does relate to Zach Wilson being drafted and all that class.
Yeah, all picked a quarterback up high.
Well, no, the Jets did, but Atlanta went with Kyle Pitts, and was that J.C. Horn with the Panthers? Yeah. All three of those teams passed on Justin Fields. So from a certain extent, they've already made this comment of this archetype of quarterback we're not willing to spend top dollar on. Like all those teams could have just had Fields on their team now and not have to worry about this. But they made that mistake then. And I guess Panthers have a new regime. So maybe the Panthers almost makes the most sense because that isn't the same general manager and organization that made that decision last time. But if all three of those teams have already kind of passed up on the rookie contract, younger version of Lamar Jackson, why would they then suddenly go and pay $250 million? Yes, for a more proven quarterback in Jackson compared to Justin Fields. But it's maybe not that surprising that these teams have passed just because of that. They've already kind of said that they're, it's telling how much the Panthers were in on Deshaun Watson apparently, and how quickly they're out on Lamar Jackson. The elite passing is what they're looking for. Even though Lamar Jackson, his touchdown rate's been really good, his passing outside the numbers, the accuracy is still not great, but his downfield accuracy is pretty great. Like, to me, I'd rather have Lamar Jackson as my NFL team quarterback than Deshaun Watson. Like, I don't want the Packers to trade for Watson, but I would love if they traded for Lamar Jackson. So I don't quite get that, but it does seem like those teams have already kind of they're afraid of the running quarterback for some reason.
Well, I think that as quick as it came out, where you had these 4 or 5 teams come out there and say they're not interested in Lamar Jackson, they're not going to chase Lamar Jackson, whatever the hell they said. I think that is where the conversation or the thought process for not just fantasy football, but also in real life football for the NFL is where people were thinking, oh, this is collusion. Well, I don't think it is collusion. I think it is truly and honestly, it's one of those, this is wrong. Setting the market at that price is ridiculous, right? So I don't think it is collusion. I just think it's time to woosah. As Martin Lawrence said, woosah, woosah.
No, I mean,
So
that's
I
what
gotta
I
say,
think. I agree
it's
with
funny.
that.
One of Gators or not Gators comments, Jamie's comments. Haslam, he's the idiot. I believe that's the owner of the Browns.
The
But
Browns, yep.
again, for a certain extent, like Browns have been nothing but awful and chaos, and everything is like bad. But I think they maybe wanted the rest of the NFL to taste that and had put that contract out there so that it messes up all these negotiations. Okay, we've got all these young quarterbacks coming up. We want every other team in our conference specifically to have to pay just as much there. And we're prepared to do. We'll plan it out so that we feel like we'll be ready for it. But these guys are almost going to be blindsided by it. But we'll find out. Maybe it'll backfire, and they'll be the only one paying a quarterback that much. But we'll see. I guess how the Browns. I do have one question for you guys for Lamar Jackson. Then we can head out of here, unless there's other ramblings that we want to say. Because I've rambled enough, so certainly you two could have the opportunity to do that. But how high are we taking Lamar Jackson in a dynasty startup? We'll say super flex. I'd imagine he still has to be in the first round, right?
He's still a top 9 quarterback for me.
Yeah.
You know, if we're gonna sit here and talk about it's a super flex number 1. We want, at least for fantasy, we want the rushing upside. We know he can pass the ball. At least I think he can pass the ball. The rushing upside is a huge plus. So he may be dropping down a little bit. He may be dropping more like 7, 8, 9, but he's still a top 9 for me.
I agree.
So you're taking and I guess both you think those should be the first 9 picks in a super flex start.
In a super flex, absolutely.
Jefferson shouldn't be going until 110, right? Or
at least in my opinion. Now I will give you a.
I agree too with you, Jay.
Yeah, I'll give you
Mike?
for instance. I just did a startup. Let's see. Let me pull this. Go ahead, Mike.
No,
get your thoughts on like where you're taking Jefferson relative to those quarterbacks.
I would say no earlier. I'm not saying I would do it, but I could see Jefferson going around 7.
Oh, you see, I could see Jefferson being taken like 6, 5, even like someone being that. I don't want to be that team though. I'm like, especially that early, not knowing who you might get as your QB like coming back. Although to be fair, the way Tua has been falling in drafts, he almost seems like you can take that early shot on Jefferson, knowing you'll at the very least you'll get Tua at your second round pick. But I think like to me, if I'm in a startup and I'm sitting at 107, Lamar Jackson is like the worst case scenario. Like he's not falling further than 107 to me. Like
yes.
if being forced to choose between Jackson and Fields or Jackson and Watson or Jackson and Jefferson, I'm taking Lamar still. So Trevor Lawrence is maybe the one guy, like 106, even 105 with Justin Herbert. That's maybe the tipping point of you can I'm
taking Herbert.
See, I think I would probably go Herbert. I think that's how my ranks are right now is Herbert, Lawrence, Jackson, 5, 6, 7 in quarterback rankings. But I think that could be kind of viewed as a tier. Like you could maybe if we get some clarity on Lamar Jackson, maybe I can be sold on him as the QB5. But that's I think the tier break to where I don't want to think about a receiver if I can just take Lamar Jackson.
So I have done 2 startups this year, and I'm not happy that I've done 2 startups by no means because I need to slow down. But
it's less than 1 per month.
I've done one.
Yeah, in one of the startups, I ended up with the 101 pick, so of course automatically took Patrick Mahomes. But then I turned around and traded. I pulled the Scott Connor method. Speaking of Scott Connor, this is twice you've been brought tonight. So
going for please, 2.
Yeah, go check out Scott Connor. He's been on my Wednesday show for Trades in 5 on Tuesdays. Go check him out. Super, super knowledgeable dude. I pulled his method out and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go get 2 elite quarterbacks in this league, and I'm gonna do it right now. So I ended up with Patrick Mahomes, and then I traded my 2nd, my 3rd, and my 5th round pick.
Okay.
And jumped all the way to 104. And I picked up Jalen Hurts.
Who went 103?
I don't even know, to be honest.
Probably Burrow.
Yeah, it would have been what you had.
Maybe
you had Allen and Burrow probably.
Mahomes Hurts.
Yeah, so Mahomes Hurts. I am completely set at quarterback for the next probably 8 years, right? So I don't have to worry about quarterback at all. Still ended up stacking with Kelsey. Still got, a couple nice little wide receivers with Marquise Brown, Johnson. My running backs aren't great, but I got a ton of them. Right. So
That's
then
the way to build. That sounds like a Scott Connor build. Yeah.
Yes. And that's exactly what I was trying to do is I wanted to see if it worked. So I did the exact same thing in my next startup. And I want to say it was like at 108, somewhere in that range, and ended up with Trevor Lawrence. So then I traded my second, my fourth, and my fifth
To move back in.
to move back into the first at 110 and got Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm still pretty set at quarterback.
And the one thing I'll ask is on these trades, I'm guessing, again, following the Scott Connor method, that you're not giving one of those cardinal rules, right? You're not giving up
Never
more startup
give up
picks.
the future first.
So, like, what is the range that you're going for on those? Well, you never give up the future first, but also the other part of the rule is never give up more startup picks than you're getting. So if you're giving up 2, 3, and 5, getting the 1, but then also getting the 2 late picks back.
Getting a 9 and 12 fit in there. Perfect.
Oh,
I always say, however many starters you have, get like that number pick, and then you're still in the quote unquote starter range. So if to start 12, and getting a 9 and a 12, perfect for that.
Mm-hmm.
I always say 2, 3, 4 for 1, 8, 9 or 1, 7, 8. Like give me the double, the 4 and the 8. Like I'll give me your latest pick that you're going to be getting is the 4th. So I'll take even though I'm getting the first. So I'm getting the first. Give me the one that's twice as late. So that's usually what I'll try as a first offer. 2 and 3 for 1 and 7, 2 and 3 for 1 and 8, something like that. And if I've got to go do the 3 picks for 3, I'll do that too. But yeah, I think I love doing that move anytime you can. I think I love both builds, and you showed like you can do it from wherever you are in the startup. Just make sure you get into that top 9 quarterback range.
Yep, you're trying to get to that top 9, and if for some reason you get the JJ lovers, you get the Chase lovers, that quarterback moves back to you, right? So then you
Watson
still
at 110.
Watson at 110. But I just wanted to give it, like I said, we've shot him out twice tonight. Just want to make sure I give up his correct
at Charles Chill FFB.
At Charles Chill FFB. Go follow him over there. He's at Destination Devi. He's all over the place. Super, super knowledgeable. And then make sure you tell him that Gator J sent you. Tell him that Going for Two family sent you over there to follow him and get the information and the insight, because he is super knowledgeable, very, very, very technical. So you may have to listen to what he's saying 2 and 3 times in order to completely understand what he's telling you to do, but you should do it. Should absolutely do it.
Scott will admit this fully. He's not the guy you go to talk to about who's the better player, what players to pick. Scott's about strategy, roster construction, big philosophies and principles. That's where Scott will.
Scott gives 2 shits what the guy's name is.
No, he's all about the asset number, not the name.
So that's why I say it may take you a minute to understand what he's saying. Go follow him. Go listen to him. Listen to it 3 and 4 times. You will finally understand it. Fellas, we have gone super long tonight. We are an hour and a half.
We can do this in half an hour, 45 minutes, not 90.
No. Not with us.
Great, Rambly Kyle and
great damn show
and of course, great to have Mike.
Enjoyed the hell out of it. So, Mike, tell everybody where they can find you. What do you got going on this offseason? Holler at your peoples.
Yeah, you can find me at Drop the Mike FF on the Twitter machine. I'll be dropping some more graphics now that it's off season with some of the new free agent jerseys and all that jazz. And you can find me at Going for Two. You can also find me on Friday nights on Rum Boys After Dark with the Rum Boys Fantasy Network. Be there a little bit. But other than that, I'm just glad not glad you guys needed someone, but I was glad I could fill in, because when I saw it was you two, I was like, oh, I got to do this thing.
I hear that. Kyle, what is going on this offseason with you? I know you've got a couple pods going. How are you handling the offseason?
Well, here on the Going for Two Live Network, we've got this show, obviously, the Dynasty Gambit. Glad to be co-hosting. And then I also have press coverage, which will be, as Jay mentioned the structure earlier, every second Monday or every 2 weeks. It'll be 1 week, Monday, Thursday, 2 shows with Gladys. And then the other weeks, it'll be 2 shows with me. Press coverage is a solo show. I usually go one-on-one interviews with different fantasy football guests. Don't quite have my guests locked down for the next episode. Still a few potential people on the list. A long weekend this weekend, so I'm going to try and get that all hammered out. But really appreciate Kevin Coleman and Matt Renshaw, my first 2 guests this season. So look out for that. Next press coverage will be March 20th. And then, of course, we'll be back on the Dynasty Gambit on March 23rd. My other podcast ventures, I already mentioned one, the Full Press Fantasy Pod, also the Full Press Packers Pod. If you want less fantasy talk, more NFL specific, although I always throw fantasy in just because it's me. I always have to ramble, right? But outside the Going for 2 Life Network, I've got those 2 full press coverage podcasts with another site, kind of like Going for 2, an amalgamation, a lot of different people can put out content there. I've got rankings on goingfor2.com. I've got my own, that'll be part of the group amalgamation rankings. I've got my own personal rankings on Full Press Coverage as well. Look for an article this weekend on Full Press Coverage. Actually, it'll be my full list, my top 25 running backs. Now, I don't have all the relative athletic scores, which I was hoping for. So I think I'm going to do it in 2 doses. I'm going to do one without the RAS scores. So like you'll see Devon A-Chain still at RB2. And then once I get more, because I think I've only, of the 28 running backs I'm ranking, I think there's only been like maybe 10 relative athletic scores available. So I'd like to get a little more before I make those changes, like say put Zach Charbonnet at RB2. So that would be, whenever I can get that, it'll be hopefully before the draft. I imagine before the draft, that'll come out and I'll have that second set of rankings. But again, all that at fullpresscoverage.com. Really, man, Mike, so happy to talk to you again. This is awesome.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And dude, please, everybody go check out goingfor2.com where you can hit all the articles that we talk about. Also we have a free Discord. Hit up the free Discord as you log on to the goingfor2.com. Down at the bottom right, you're going to see the logo for the Discord. It is free. Click that link, jump into the Discord. We are all in there all the time. I'm not in there as much as I want to be. I've got other stuff going, just like these guys do. Just go ahead and at me if you need something. I have no problem jumping in there. But yes, go over there. It is a free Discord. Many analysts that are on there, chit-chatting, giving you a little, giving you some love, all that kind of good stuff. Guys, thank you so much for tonight. I am at FantasyJ77 over there on Twitter. You can find me here on Thursday nights, every other Thursday right now, every Thursday during this season, Wednesday nights over at Fantasy Intervention. I greatly appreciate Mike. Thank you so much for jumping in tonight. Last minute, Kyle, as always, thank you, sir. We are done for the night. It is a great night. Going for 2.